Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. So today on the program, things are a little hectic here behind the scenes, but everything should work out just fine. We have Scott Schober. He is our resident cybersecurity expert, and man, have we been focusing on cybersecurity a lot this month. So I'm looking forward to a lot of their a lot of our discussion and more. So, of course, everyone, welcome into the Computer America Show. If you would like to check this out, of course, computeramerica.com. It will have links to everything that we talk about, including show notes of today's show, yesterday's show, future shows, all that kind of thing. It will have a link to our guest website. Although, if you'd like to go check it out, Scott actually keeps his website very, very well populated with great new content and things like that. So, of course, scottschober.com. And plenty of stuff to talk about. So also while you're there, find us on social media, wherever you are on social media, there's probably an @Computer America there. And on top of that, I know, the podcast. If you don't happen to catch today's live show, of course, we're primarily a radio show, but the podcast is simply the daily radio show that is then rebroadcast wherever podcasts are heard. You can find that very simply. So, I think all that said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our guest on, which I actually see him, and he's in the studio. Man, he has a better setup than I do, and I am very jealous. So, everyone, why don't we go ahead and introduce our longtime correspondent and, of course, friend of the show, Scott Schober. So, let me go ahead and unmute you. And there you go, you're unmuted. Scott, can you hear me?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me there, Ben?
I can. You're actually pretty low, though. I think I can turn you up on this side, though. So.
Okay.
Try again one more time and go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
This is Scott Schober here. Glad to be here with Ben Crossman on Computer America.
Perfect. Yeah, and again, thank you so much. Man, that was good. So before we get started, of course, you've been on the show many a time, but for anyone out there who maybe this is their first time listening to a segment with with yourself and myself, let's go ahead and talk about your background a little bit and what it is you try to accomplish, by coming onto Computer America and talking about cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. My company, Berkeley Varitronic Systems, is a Metuchen-based Central New Jersey business. We're privately held. We focus on a lot of unique wireless tools and security tools, especially in the past 10 years or so, many of them with the focus towards cybersecurity. So our goal is to find ways to keep people safe. A lot of that focus, again, is in the area of wireless, but we also share a lot of best practices, common sense things that people can do to hopefully keep safe. And that's our goal, just to educate people and provide niche solutions to help solve their problems.
Very, very well said. And of course, with that being said, we have kind of made this segment not just the current events, but of course what it is you're working with Berkeley Varitronic Systems, who of course you are CEO of, and wireless security as well always seems to come into play. But like I've been saying, there have been a lot of recent stories and recent articles that I think people either could use some clarification on, or maybe they missed it altogether, and that's where I always like to start with you, is kind of current events. And unless you had a particular topic that you wanted to cover, kind of right off the bat, I had one that just came up today, and I was wondering if you would like to comment on Mozilla. Really, I think they took down about 200 separate add-ins or plugins, however you want to say it, to the Mozilla browser, and they did it for a variety of security reasons, actually. So I was wondering if you'd like to start there, and have you heard about what happened there?
I heard a little bit about it. I haven't dug in fully on it, but a lot of times these browser plugins are very problematic. And if they don't take them down, if there are vulnerabilities that are discovered, it can wreak havoc, because a lot of times there's malware dispensed through it. And I think we've talked about this many times. And when you get plugins, when you get pop-ups, there's a lot of different ways that malware can get onto people's computer. In fact, I was just speaking to a relative on the weekend, and they had that exact type of problem, and they panicked and didn't know what to do, and basically yanked their computer out of the wall because they were so nervous. Just pulled the power and screamed, "Ah, what do I do here? I'm not sure." They were paranoid in their case. I found out a little bit more information afterward, and it started with a call, and it ended up that actually somebody got remote access to their computer that I later found out, and placed some malware on there. Very messy. So I mean, just while I kind of shifted subjects a little bit there, but just anybody that does get a phone call, and again, it could be from, in this particular case, they said it was somebody that was helping them secure their cloud account. Be really careful. Be leery of these phone calls that come in. I've had one from Microsoft support technicians, Apple technicians. In this case, again, it was some cloud expert that was trying to help somebody secure. There's a lot of phone scams that are going around that are tied in with other known companies that just fool people, and they get you so nervous. You start to divulge information. You give them your IP address. You give them your account access. You give them some remote access. They got you. You're in big trouble. So really be careful. Don't give away anything over the phone or let people connect into your computer. Big no-no.
Sure. Yeah, and actually that is much more related to Mozilla and what happened here than than you kind of let on, because this has to do not so much with installing malware, but many of these were taken down because they're from actually like 130 of them. 130 of the different add-ons were from a single company, and they allowed something called or they allowed something that was they allowed scripts or programs to be executed from third-party servers. So essentially, and this is mainly business-to-business software that was the problem, where they were allowing outside servers and outside sources to execute code on the host computer. And of course, that means that you're giving anyone who has access to their system access to the businesses who are then using the add-ons. And that seems like it can do almost the same thing like you were talking about. Like, that is essentially giving someone else access to your computer, right? If they're allowed to, execute code from anywhere.
Yeah, if you can execute a script and you have remote access, you can only imagine the dangers that could come out there. And I think that's kind of a hacker's dream. So you have to keep in mind too, especially in the B2B community, businesses thrive by having remote access, and people are working remotely these days. And there's certainly advantages and cost savings and so on and so forth. But when you trust on third parties there, and if you don't know always who's accessing, and you're giving people permissions and privileges, if that information is compromised, it may appear to be a third party that has legitimate access, and it's a hacker and causing all kinds of havoc there. So lots of concerns come into play.
Definitely a lot of concerns, and again, that was only a portion of them. The other portion, and this is something that we just had a conversation with a guest, actually earlier today when we recorded another interview. But the conversation with that one was, man, I should definitely. You might actually know the gentleman. He's actually very popular in the kind of security side. Mr. Rex Lee. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's a cybersecurity advisor, and I'm not saying that all of cybersecurity people have to know each other, but anyways, we talked with him, and the other part that came up were the end user license agreements, the thing that we all click through but we don't read. I think about 70 of the add-ons for Mozilla, they were taken down because their end user license agreements conflicted with themselves. They were
Wow.
purposely misleading, or at least a portion of them were purposely misleading to the point where they offered no legal protection for the consumer, and they actually let the company kind of get away with things that they weren't supposed to. Like, those end user license agreements aren't exactly, useful, are they?
No, they're very egregious. You bring up a great point, and probably good for everybody out there that's watching and listening to take a moment and kind of take stock of what they're signing away, what they're opting into. I always say, I give you an example, and we may have even chatted about this a while back with Face App, popular app. If you want to look older and do all kinds of cool, funny stuff, it kind of caught the storm, and millions of downloads happened. Ended up being a Russian-owned company, stored all of these pictures on a remote server, and basically had everybody's pictures. And what's the future of authentication? We know it's what? Facial.
Yeah.
But in the process of downloading that app, you had to click agree to terms and conditions. In that, what you were agreeing upon was you allowed them access to contacts on your phone, on your mobile device. You allowed them, obviously, to have access to your picture and store it, but you also allowed them to look back at your history of everything you typed into your browser. So if you think about that, who wants to give some third party access to that? And you gave away your rights to that company to now sell that information. Nobody would know that just reading through all the legalese there. So it's very egregious. And the stat that I always find fascinating, I share when I talk to different audiences about cybersecurity and privacy, is it takes about 3 months to read all of the terms and conditions that reside on the average person's smartphone. Who has spent 3 months reading all the terms and conditions? Nobody does. You're excited to download Candy Crush or whatever, and you're scrolling through it, and you say, agree, because you want to download that, whether you're paying for it or whether it's free.
Mhm.
Bottom line is, you're giving away something, especially if it's free. You always ask yourself, if it's free, you're trading it probably for security. So again, find that balance there and be careful not to sign your life away or give away your privacy. And I think we talked about too, oftentimes what else happens? You're giving them permission to basically follow you. Everything's geocoded these days, be it apps, if you're in the car, if you're on vacation. Well, through these apps, they know where you are, which in turn allows them to use metadata to push ads and content and all kinds of junk your way. So look closely, and it's good to do some housekeeping. My rule of thumb, if you haven't used an app that resides on your phone in the past month, delete it, get rid of it. It's not serving you any purpose, especially if it's free. It's only doing is probably draining your battery, it's tracking you, it's giving away private information.
Yeah, I am trying to find the website that I found. It was like Too Long End User License Agreement or something like that, where they have kind of people either on a volunteer basis or they pay people to go through and break it down into simple English with kind of checkpoints. Because like you said, 3 months. Yeah, and really that was the part with the Mozilla end user license agreements, was that you're asking who has spent 3 months reading everything that they download on their phone, when a large portion of them conflicted with themselves, and some of them they contacted and they fixed it, but others, it was almost like a boilerplate copy paste, because obviously these people are app developers. They want to have an end user license agreement, but they just kind of go online, fill out a form, and then they contradict themselves with inserted language that they want, but doesn't agree with other parts of the end user license agreement. So when you say who's reading it, probably not even the people who are making these things to agree to.
Yeah.
So
yeah, good point there. And I think a lot of times they do borrow the language from yet another's app. So there's one lawyer that probably made a lot of money writing terms and conditions, and that's been copied and tweaked and modified endless times. And it certainly makes you wonder whatever happens if something serious happens. And now you got to revert back to that document and you go, oh no, what did I sign my life away to? This is crazy.
I found it, by the way, and I highly recommend it because they actually do a pretty good job. It's called Terms of Service Didn't Read, or tosdr.org. And they have this checklist, and they do most of the major services such as Amazon, GitHub, Stack Overflow, SoundCloud, so on and so forth. And they try to break it down as best they can. And, it's not their job to fix them, but it's at least their job to, I guess, try to inform you what everyone is asking for and permissions. So that was the big hubbub with Mozilla, and really the takedowns were happening from within. They weren't really alerted. These were Mozilla's own security. The people who run kind of the add-on section said that these 200 apps did not meet their standard for security, privacy, so on and so forth. So I thought it was nice to see Mozilla step up and kind of encourage that everyone follow the rules. Now, next topic, and again, if you don't mind me, kind of jumping in here, Scott, and kind of directing us to another one. The next one, and this one has been happening all over today. Mozilla happened a couple days ago. This next one has to do with Ring, and I think it's very closely related to what we were talking about. They said, and I guess the big thing here is Ring app for Android found to be packed with third-party data trackers. And you mentioned this with the Russian, hosted app with the face pictures and things like that. Ring. Talk about why people should be concerned about, maybe their security when it comes to their internet connected doorbells, especially when it's in people's homes and things like that. And then we'll get into the meat of why everyone seems to be freaking out about Ring and how much data they're leaking out about you.
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's kind of ironic when you look at something as a Ring doorbell and you associate that as a security product.
Mm-hmm.
But now you look at it and learn that it has some weaknesses and vulnerabilities in it that compromises security. So it's very ironic. I would think anybody that offers security products would really, really, really be careful and vet the product to make sure there's no vulnerabilities, no way that it could be exploited, and spend the extra money. Why? Because that's your secret sauce. What's going to happen immediately is your customer base is going to start going, oh no, they're going to be putting pieces of black electrical tape over the Ring doorbell because they're nervous who's being spied on. They're nervous they'll be pulling them out because they're going to say, wow, that connects into my home network and that could be compromised. And that's really the concern there. If there's any vulnerabilities through apps, and it's usually through a third-party developer, they're given typically permission and they're given a software development kit, an SDK, that allows them to have lower access level to control devices and exploit different things and features. That's great for consumers. That's great when products are enhanced and developed. The problem is when hackers learn about it and they start to exploit vulnerabilities through this channel. If they got their hands on the software developer kit and learn about the weaknesses, that's often what can happen. And I've heard a lot of horror stories. Myself personally, I'm not using a Ring doorbell just for the fear and my paranoia perhaps, but I don't want somebody else, a third party with the potential to see me going in and out of my house and knowing my whereabouts. They may not even do anything and actively hack into my house and do specifics, but what if they just know who's coming and going? That's a concern right there for many people, just from a security standpoint. So before you're so quick to run out and get a Ring doorbell, and this is true of many of them, they have third-party software developer kits and access to that. You have to vet it yourself and be careful. And it's a costly solution. It's not just that you want to screw it in there and it's $10. You got to pay some money. And a lot of them, there's a monthly fee for some of this, depending upon how much data there is or storage there is, just like many wireless cameras.
Yeah, and of course, you are giving it away so much. And by the way, this the investigation that everyone seems to be referring to, and I say everyone because I found like 4 different articles. So suddenly, that's everyone. So everyone's talking about this. Was carried out by the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They're as reputable as I think you can be, and they're very good at what they do. So what they found when they were looking into the app and they admitted themselves there, one iteration, they tested on 3.21.1. The current operating system of the Ring doorbell is 3.22, but I doubt that all that much has changed, between 21 and 22. So anyways, what they found was that they revealed PII delivery to branch.io, mixpanel.com, appsflyer.com, and facebook.com. And like you mentioned with the Facebook and its software development kit that you can integrate, They said that the information includes time zone, device model, language preference, screen resolution, unique identifier, which persists when you when you reset the OS level advertiser ID. So even if you reset your settings and and you think you're completely clean, they still have your unique identifier, as well as hardware ID, identity ID, and of course your apps and things like that. Essentially, what they're saying is that the Ring Doorbell operating system immediately sends your device specifics and, of course, where you are, where you're located, what other devices are on the network, all that kind of thing, to not just Facebook, but multiple other advertising companies. And that's, I think, where everyone's kind of taking issue. So, Scott, you kind of mentioned this earlier about when you sign up for things for free, you think, oh, what am I giving up? And is that privacy? Is that my data? Is that identity? And is that security? What about when products, like, no one is really giving out a free Ring Doorbell, as far as I know. You pay for these things, and yet they seem to fall into the same category as freeware, or, just you give away your data to use these products, even though you pay for them. Is that becoming more of a common thing?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, if anything, the onus goes back to the manufacturer again here. You go back, who's the parent company? When you start to look at these security devices where you're paying for a hardware device that connects into your network, and again, there's a lot of different ways. The conduit could be Bluetooth. Conduit could be Bluetooth low energy. It could be Wi-Fi. There's a lot of different wireless connectivity. They all have known vulnerabilities in the hacking community, and there's freeware out there that allows you to hack Bluetooth low energy, Wi-Fi 2.4, Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz. So if you want to take it down and hack into something, it's not that hard to do. So I think users need to be careful to jump in. I was nervous when the first Bluetooth locks came into play.
Mm-hmm.
It got very popular. Nobody wanted to use the old-fashioned key. Got me concerned. In fact, one of the chapters in my new book, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business, I dive into some of the physical things versus some of the wireless vulnerabilities. So again, Ring Doorbell is just another great example. I'll bring up another one that parallels it that I love. Look at Wyze camera systems, if you're familiar with that. Mass-produced cameras. They're very effective. They're great for monitoring security remotely. I've played around with these a lot, and you could turn the camera on and off. They've got night vision. They could pan. They can tilt. They can zoom. You can record up to a short period of time. All of this can be done without spending money for actual cloud data or other things. There's a minimum amount of storage you have. And guess what? If you've got a remote house, if you've got something outside that you want to monitor, and it's even got motion triggering, you can actually box and say, okay, I want to have movement of a person going by, but I don't care if it's a squirrel running by stealing some food from the bird feeder. Don't detect me. So it gives you alerts. That technology is brilliant. It's kind of borderlining, taking the security industry, bringing it into AI and machine learning a little bit, and $30 for a camera. As long as you have a Wi-Fi network, you're in business. That to me is pretty impressive. And I think a lot of people have done this. I know my father, he's a big fan of the Wyze camera. Mm-hmm. He's got 8 of them just around the perimeter of his house. He gets alerted anytime there's anything suspicious, boom, right on his mobile phone. He could look at it. He could zoom in, figure out what the threat is. But again, are there vulnerabilities? Where's that data residing? It's on some remote server. We don't know. So if the wrong guy gets access to this stuff, they could definitely cause some problems.
And we recently, we recently reviewed the Xiaomi My Smart Home security camera, and it has that that motion detection, and it will tell you if there's motion, if it's a person, if it's not a person. By the way, bears pop up as people, because we live in North Carolina and we have bears. But
big enough bear, it will. Yeah.
Yeah. They definitely do. But I will say that our biggest sticking point when we review the camera, because the camera is actually very, very good. The battery lasts a long time. The picture's clear after you set up the network. Although it kind of gives itself its own little network. It comes with a little router, and that works like that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really So it connects to the internet, but it doesn't stay on your own network. It creates its own little network. Um,
Okay. Like a
and I got to
subnet or
say,
something like that.
yeah, and of course, the only thing I have to say about that is that we have no idea, and unfortunately, I'm just not technical enough. I have no idea where they're sending that information to, and I got to say that through their translations, clearly Xiaomi, they are Chinese, of course,
Possibly Chinese.
products. But Scott, I think you know as well as I do that when you buy a webcam, it's probably going to be Chinese at some point. So everything's just manufactured in China. My biggest concern with this was just the fact that it was such a good working camera, but the operating side, the software side, the app side, I have no trust in it. It's they have 250,000 votes or ratings on the Android App Store, and
Wow.
they have like 17 on the iOS App Store. You can probably also speak to the legitimacy of fake reviews and how people can manufacture kind of online presences that may deceive the casual person. They could look at this and go, 250,000 reviews, they must be super popular and super reputable.
Sure.
Computer America could not vouch for that. So
Yeah, and you make a great point. In fact, the whole rating system, and I always go back to Amazon because that's kind of the gold standard. Everybody buys from Amazon and they
hmm
want the easy button there. But ratings, and even Amazon themselves admittedly has clamped down on the rating system because they've learned there's so many fraudulent reviews. People can be paid virtually nothing on the other side of the world to write a fake review. So yeah, it's a legitimate person typing in the review, but they're paid or bribed, and that's not good. So when you look at products, and we sell our products on Amazon, and my books sell on Amazon, so on and so forth,
hmm
I often wonder, I look at someone else and say, wow, how did they get thousands and thousands of reviews? And in your mind, you say, that must be a really good book, or that must be a really good product, just to your point. But you should use caution there. I think it's always good to kind of read the reviews, the best review and the worst review, and then make your own determination based upon that and judge, is this credible, this review? Has it got a million spelling errors? Does it look like it's somebody that did it in 30 seconds and was paid to do it? That'll tell you really quick.
Yeah, and of course, you would think that with all this machine learning, that the that Amazon would be the one to kind of tell you these reviews are probably fake. But
Yes.
no, Amazon is one of the first ones to be tricked. And much to your point, there was an article before the holidays, and this is where people were doing most of their shopping online. That scale has tipped. People don't go into stores; they
Yes.
shop online. Uh, and I'm sure, Scott, that you notice this when you shop on Amazon. They have like the Amazon favorites. That and of course they've even said themselves that the Amazon favorite within a category, be it a USB charger or something like that, will get like 6 times as many orders as something else within the category. I
Yeah.
thought those were kind of handpicked, and in my cynical self, I thought those were paid for by Amazon. It's worse than that. They just simply take the most reviewed product, the highest reviewed product, and the most popular product, essentially by sale volume, and they say this is the Amazon favorite. They don't even curate that themselves. They let these fake scam reviews essentially dictate the quote unquote Amazon favorite. They're working on it, but that was how it operated, as recent as 2 months ago.
Yeah, yep. And if you look at the Amazon engine and how it works, another interesting area, and I never knew this, I learned this again as we sell products on Amazon.
hmm
When you fulfill an order in a timely fashion, and you kind of get a good checkbox that, hey, this company fulfilled what they said they would, you get rewarded with that by Amazon pushing that in front of more people.
hmm
And I notice when we line up, we have a good inventory of a product, and we move product and we fulfill in a timely fashion. We deliver before sometimes that the drop dead date on there.
Yeah.
They reward you with more orders. Why? Because you think about it, Amazon takes a cut. I mean, in many cases, it could be 8 to maybe 15% of the product's
Hmm.
cost. That's very nice fulfillment for a company that's not necessarily brick and mortar. So they have to really do a good job there fulfilling orders. And if your product is not stocked and ready to ship quickly, you should not list it on Amazon, because you'll get hit by that. And the reward will now suddenly disappear. Now you'll be penalized, and you will find that products won't move very quickly. So a smart person that sells in that e-commerce space on Amazon is really going to think ahead and have adequate inventory to fulfill it as they're doing their marketing. And you'll notice sales will probably double. It's fabulous. They do a great job. I'll give them that. We get orders almost daily now from Amazon, and our ticket price for products is a little bit higher than selling a book or a tchotchke. So it's very profitable for companies if they get in that space. As long as they can support the system and be part of it, they'll do great.
Yeah, and of course that's that is their bread and butter, and obviously there's a reason Amazon's valued at like $1 trillion. They do it better than anyone else. No offense, Sears and eBay, they missed their chance. Amazon just completely capitalized on that. But of course, we deviated just a little bit, and just to kind of cap it off, I did want to say that this finding from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Ring, by the way, of course, owned by Amazon. So this is this really goes to show that everything Scott was saying about, a seller's credentials and things like that, that's one part of the equation. And then to make sure that they get the right products in front of you, it's not so much about the quality of the seller, it's also about the data of the consumer and what they're looking at, what they're looking for, and how can they get that data and who can they give it to. And it looks like they also, they were also giving everything to Mixpanel. And by the way, Mixpanel was a third party that, by the way, Ring gave Mixpanel user full names, email addresses, device information such as operating system version and model, Bluetooth, whether or not it's enabled, and what app or what is connected via Bluetooth, app settings, including the number of locations that the user has installed Ring, and more. So to bring this back in a long big loop, Scott, we were talking about end user license agreements earlier. This is, I think, a problem that people don't really realize, is that you may sign the end user license agreement with Ring, but then almost like a Russian nesting doll, I'm not saying that they're Russian, but almost like a nesting doll, there's the Mixpanel user agreement that people are just blindly signing on to because it's nestled within the Ring user license agreement. So that so I can see why people are kind of miffed at Ring, and of course there have been calls that Ring needs to really address all of the data that is being leaked from the Ring doorbell. I wanted your professional opinion on the fact that, just kind of in general, I don't think Ring is all that different than a lot of other apps or services. I think they're just one of the most popular, so they're under a closer microscope. This seems pretty par for the course, though.
Yeah, I think it's more of a premium offering. Unfortunately, for the price you pay, it should be commensurate with the level of security. That's what one would think. And I don't think a lot of people necessarily associate Ring with the parent Amazon. And that may be true when you hear of something like YouTube. You associate who's the parent of YouTube. Oh, wait, it's owned by Google. And who owns Instagram? Oh, wait a minute. You start to realize the larger parents have their hands in a lot of our data. And when they have their hands and access to our data, they can use that data internally to sell you things. They can use that to sell to third parties, so they can then target you and advertise to you. We don't realize how much our data is sold based upon what we use, what we type, where we walk, what apps we download, what we watch. We're being monitored and surveilled. And I don't want to try to convey a picture of Big Brother here, but in reality, that's what is going on in a sense. So I think it's just good to always pause for a second before you buy something, before you download something. Ask yourself a few questions. If you're not sure, do a quick Google search. Reach out to a couple people that you trust that understand the technology maybe a little bit deeper, to understand what you're trading for the latest and greatest tech gadget. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. And to take that even one step further, this is another related news story. I'm happy that these are able to. Sorry about that. That these are able to, kind of line up like this. But Avast, I'm sure that you've heard of them. They are one of the largest free anti-malware companies out there. Free anti-malware for a while there was all the rage. Like everyone had like 3 of them running, even though you totally shouldn't do that. But Avast was definitely a big one. And I got to say that this article just came out saying that Avast, and let's go ahead and put that up on the video portion so everyone can see. But Avast, they have free antivirus, of course, that you can download. But they said that free antivirus, much to your point earlier, that what are you giving up, harvests all your clicks, sells them to third parties. And I think we can also kind of loop in, just because it's related, Scott, maybe your experiences with free malware and kind of what that you're really giving away, which you may just be repeating yourself. But on top of that, free VPN services as well, because I think that's tied in, and people think that they're doing the right thing. They think that they're being safe and they're protecting them, their data and their browsing history from prying eyes. But if it's free, how reliable is that?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up that point, Ben, because it's just about what I was going to show. I did a chapter on VPNs in my book, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business, and did some research.
Mm-hmm.
I do use a VPN. I did pay for it. There's some that you pay a reasonable fee. Some are a little expensive. Some you pay once for the rest of your life. It's worth paying for that, because do you want somebody selling that information, your personal information, what website you go to, as you mentioned, what clicks that you have, those type of things just are not good. It doesn't mean that the VPN isn't providing a level of security. It is, but the part that bothers me the most is when you associate free, what are you giving up for that? And it's not written in any giant bold print that it will stand out and say, oh, by the way, we're selling your personal information. Doesn't happen. It's usually in that fine print in the terms and conditions. And again, you're so blinded by free,
Mm-hmm.
you're not paying attention to the most important information. And here again, the irony, a VPN is something that you associate with security. It's providing you a level of security. So you got to pay for certain things, and it's money well spent when you pay for a good VPN.
Yeah, and I think VPNs in particular, and I think really anti-malware, they provide a service that doesn't really get too or doesn't have to be very intrusive, but they have to make their money back. I got to say though, VPN services in particular, having to reroute everyone's internet traffic, and depending on the size of the company, internet traffic and paying for server space and paying like that money adds up very, very quickly.
Yeah.
They're spending money hand over fist, and they have to make that back somehow. It's not a charity. No one is going to be a free VPN just to be a VPN. I think that in particular, if you're not paying for a VPN, either you're getting extremely low bandwidth, which we have certainly seen, or just the fact that, it's just not working, or they're harvesting your data so that they can sell it themselves. It's no one's giving that away for free. That is a very expensive endeavor. So
yeah, I always associate too, when you pay for something, be it a product, software, service, there's a natural kind of culpability, maybe you could say, or you associate some accountability to somebody. You're paying dollars for something and you expect something in return. When you get something for free, you have zero expectations other than it saved me $1. You hope it works if it does work, but what happens when it fails you? Do you think they're going to be there and give you an hour worth of customer support? I could comment on this. I had a major hack recently to my Apple notebook.
Mm-hmm.
It really bothered me. And I spent a couple hours on it. I had one of our tech gurus that knows cyber, knows IT. He spent some time on it and struggled. I finally had to call Apple. I went through the first tech. It took over an hour. They couldn't help me. They finally put me in touch with their best guy. We spent about another hour and a half. Finally, we got it and figured it out. That somebody hacked in and they changed one of the settings on my computer, isolated it, cleaned it, everything else. Fortunately, I had a backup and everything to be safe. But it was interesting. I pay a lot of money. I probably overpay for Apple products. But when I do pick the phone up and I need a service call, they said, we're not going to hang up and this call won't end until you're back in business. And it made you feel good. I said, wow, okay, they're here for me. Hey, it's a Friday night. It was 9 o'clock at night. Yeah, they're getting paid money, I'm sure, to do this. But it gave you a feeling like they really care and they want you to be secure and take care of the problem. It left me with just a great feeling inside and say, wow, I overpaid for these products, but they were there when I needed them. I can't say that about all products. Some products I'll buy, and as you say, they're mass produced in China, but there's no company that you can call and talk to a human. You're stuck in the endless voicemail, on the internet doing your own research, your head spins and it ends up in a pile with other gadgets and things, or you try to return it. That's frustrating.
Yeah.
That's not good customer service. So I think people have to realize, to push people out to these frequently asked questions in the website and 24/7 help that you can get, it's not useful. Talking to a person sometimes really makes sense, and it's kind of nice too.
No, I've run into that myself, and I think Google is one of the most egregious of the offenders there, because they, I do pay Google. I'm one of the few people who pays Google for more Google Drive space, and but still, you won't get a number to call a person. You get sent to, like you said, frequently asked questions and things like that. To get someone on the phone from Google is literally impossible. So. I will say that Apple, though, in particular, is very, very good about customer service and the like. So, by the way, just to wrap up this whole Avast free thing before we jump to another topic, I got to say that what they were really doing was they were partnering with a service, and they just had it right here. And by the way, Avast is part of AVG, and it looks like they were using JumpShot. JumpShot has relationships with a lot of the major companies like Google, Pepsi, Microsoft, Home Depot, and what they were doing, and you can see an example of the code that they were pushing out, where they were tracking your clicks, and they have, device, which would be the name of your device, the date which you click something, and then they would have the domain that you were on, so like Amazon.com, and then whatever you clicked on whatever website you were on. So in this case, they gave an example of looking at, let's say, an iPad Pro. And all that entire little chunk of data is then shipped off to JumpShot Insights, which then packages the data and sells it to, again, the large companies that they partner with. So that was where Avast free antivirus was making a little bit of money on the side, which was tracking what it is you're looking at in your consumer habits if you had it on your computer. Scott, it just seems like that strategy for monetization of free users is just coming up every single time. Like, it's time and time again.
You know why? Because it works. Why is spam? Why are we continually bombarded with spam? Because it works. Why do we get junk mail in our mailbox? Because it works. Why are these companies selling our metadata and our clicks and our likes and what we hover over with our mouse, what we type in our browser? Because it works. They've learned how to effectively monetize that quickly. And again, it's not by a lot of people. This is done somewhat automated in the background. And it's really creating, I call it the digital footprint for each of us. Our digital footprint of what we're doing, what we like, and what we're viewing, and what we hover on is giving them a very, very powerful data set for things in the future, so they can effectively sell and market to us. And we are victims of it. And I've done analysis, and I'm guilty of it. I've looked back on purchases. Hindsight, I say, you know why I purchased that? Because I was viewing it, I was doing research on it, I watched a video on it, I read reviews on it. Then they slowly peppered me on all my different mobile devices over time, saying, you got to get this, Scott. This is wonderful. It's on sale. Yeah. Guess what? I give into that click and impulse buy. So it works. If it works for me, and I'm paranoid, I think it works for most people that have any level of use with mobile devices, computers, tablets, and the internet, which is all of us. Everybody pretty much does it.
So sometimes I hear these stories, and they come from just random users on the internet. I frequent sites, think like Reddit and other, kind of social sites that people put any kind of topic. And one story from Reddit that really popped out to me was that they attributed certain things to, I guess, the incorrect data flow. And one of them was that they, a gentleman lived in a house. They had housekeepers over. They assumed the housekeepers came over to clean. They were, they were two Hispanic ladies, and they assumed that because they had an Alexa device or something like that, that they heard the housekeeper speaking in Spanish, his search results, and, well, I should say, like, his ads and promoted searches and things like that, suddenly his ads started popping up in Spanish. And he's like, well, the only way that could have happened was my digital assistant picked up my housekeeper speaking Spanish, and now they assume that I am Spanish. When in reality, when they dug into it, they actually found that no, the housekeepers had smartphones. They either connected to his Wi-Fi, or they were just kind of geotagged to his house. And I guess, in their settings, their phones are set to Spanish and blah, blah, blah. Essentially, his house was kind of marked for advertisers as this is a household with a Spanish-speaking person in it. Mm-hmm. And, all it took was just the visitor's phone being in Spanish to, kind of influence the marketing that happened at his house. But again, it was kind of I found it interesting that they assume this is how it happened, when, the end result is the same. He's still getting ads in Spanish, but they attributed, like, the knee-jerk reaction is they're always listening, they're always watching, they're always doing this. When, like I said, the end result's the same, but how it happened, a little bit different.
Yeah, I'll give you another little anecdote that I'm thinking
Sure.
might be associated to it, because I've seen this before. One might associate that the cleaning service would have to access this particular individual's access point, their Wi-Fi network in the house. Indirectly, they may have. Why? Because if you look at all of them, Comcast and Optimum, Infinity, blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
all these broadband providers provide millions of free hotspots. So if you're a subscriber, maybe the cleaning service was a subscriber to the same broadband provider as the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
And the homeowner's access point would allow for a free hotspot and allow them to connect in through his, and they could look certainly at the IP traffic and make that association, mixing up, thinking, well, that's somebody Spanish that lives in that house, and now hence target them. So from a technological standpoint, I can easily see how that happens. It happens every day.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it's always right. And to your point, the part is it's a little bit scary because we're being watched. And with all these different home assistants, we're really being listened to at different levels. And we don't realize it. It's not just always the tagline, "Hey Siri," or whatever,
Right.
that picks it up and turns it on. There's a little bit more, and a couple stories have slowly come up and they've admitted to it. So it's a concern for all of us.
And speaking to that point, the one of the first stories was, of course, I think it was the Samsung and a smart TV, and the fact that they said that they were recording every conversation that happened in the same room with the smart TV. And my knee-jerk reaction was, of course, because in the early days, before machine learning and voice recognition really hit its stride, Samsung was just constantly recording and analyzing the recordings so that it could listen for the activation keyword. And of course, the side effect was Samsung was recording you, but they were recording you, according to them, just so that they could listen for the activation phrase. Just like the last story, the end result's the same. Samsung was recording you at all times. The reason for it, at least, for Samsung, it was probably a little bit less insidious than people thought, but hey, they were right. Consumers were right on that one. And
I think my theory on it is some of the larger tech companies that are putting out smartphones and these listening assistants, the Alexas and the Googles, the Apple, and everyone else.
Right.
Some of them do a better job. Why? Because they actually encrypt the data. So in other words, they're listening in and they do a dump every once in a while, and nobody could prove what that information is going back and forth. However, if you monitor a lot of the communications, you could see surges of traffic going back and forth, different packets, or in the case of a mobile phone, wireless activity, that there's a lot of things going on that cannot be explained in all cases. And there's been some apps that they've done research and they've proven, yeah, actually, they do turn your microphone on. Yeah, they do turn your camera on. They do collect data and then they shut it off. Oops. And a lot of it, as you mentioned, they say, well, that's so we could train it, so we could learn it. That was initial. We left the settings on. It's just too tempting and too easy for these companies to collect this data, this mass surveillance, and use it to their advantage, not just to make a better product, but to sell that information so they or others can monetize on it. That's a problem.
And I'm trying to find the exact publication, and it was like it was actually a major, kind of journalist outlet. It was like the New York Times or something like that. But anyways, they did this giant expose on data, and essentially they were checking all the data and what it really means to have it, and in particular, they were focusing on one individual. I think they left out the name for privacy purposes, although they showed how little that really mattered. They said that they were able to track driving route. They were able to check, when they stopped at relative friends, families, girlfriends, whatever locations. They knew exactly when their work schedule was, what their diet was, because they stopped at certain fast food and, grocery chains and things like that. And really, the point was that yeah, they took away the first name, last name of the individual, and yeah, they didn't have the address or anything else, quote unquote, identifiable. But when you find the data could only be attributed to the 34-year-old male individual who started their day at this location, ended their day at this location, worked at this location, and frequented these locations. There's really not a way to remove identifiable information when they collect it in that level of detail.
No. So. And to your point, I think it's interesting, as humans, if you take the average human going to school, going to work, going on errands, we're very predictable. We're pattern-oriented people. And when I go to a certain area and go to the Starbucks, if I'm foolish enough to connect into the free Wi-Fi there, guess what? I don't have to actively do anything. Just by my phone getting within close proximity, I automatically will associate to that. So when we leave our Wi-Fi on, our Bluetooth, which is Bluetooth low energy, and so on and so forth, what are we doing? We're saying to everyone, here I am, without us even thinking about it, because they naturally will associate to access points. This is true if you're in your car driving, if you're walking on a busy street, entering a building, going into the school, going to your favorite restaurant. Your phone will automatically associate to these things if you've been on before. So I go every once in a while, I go back to my laptop and I scrub it. Anything where I did associate to it in the past, I scrub it and make sure that I'm only connecting to secure things. Same thing with my phone. So it's interesting. Take the time out to look how many devices, access points you've associated to just with Wi-Fi on your tablet or computer one day. You'll probably realize, oh my goodness, there's 100 in there. Never realized it. Well, every time you get near it, that's pinging out and talking to it and giving away information about you.
So the only thing I can say that's something that happened in recent years that people should definitely take advantage of. And by the way, Scott, we're going to transition to one more topic before the end of the show because it's flown on by, scaring people. It's a lot of fun. But the European General Data Protection Regulation that happened, because companies don't want to be shut out of the European Union, they have to, Europe said that these companies who operate within Europe have to enforce these laws everywhere that they do business, or else they will be shut out of the EU. So even though it's the EU data protection laws, they apply to us here in the US. And something that has changed since the implementation of these is that you can go to Facebook, Alphabet, Amazon, and you can actually request the data that they have on you. Whether or not they'll delete it or you can change anything about it, who knows? But you can at least see what these companies have on you. And that's a pretty recent change, and people need to start taking advantage of that. So, Scott, I will say, with that, let's transition. We have like 5 minutes, and I thought this was a pretty fun one. I don't know how close you've been following robocalls in the U.S. They are rampant. There's some technology. I'm not sure, Scott, if you've heard of Stir Shaken, that is
Yep, absolutely.
hoping to kind of curb this. But for the moment, this is the most ridiculous thing, because you watch the evening news and it's like the DOJ is about to allow criminal. They can up the fines. They can do this. They can do that. And my initial reaction was, I was telling my family, they could say that for every robocall that you do, you will get the death penalty and you will be fined $1 trillion. The truth of the matter is that even with increased penalties, increased fines, criminal, charges, and even extradition charges, and working more outside the country, $60,000, 60000, have been collected by the Federal Communications Commission for violating robocalls. Ever. And that's with like over $1 billion in fees and fines being levied. They were only able to collect $60,000, and they've only jailed like 2 people. So Scott, that was my initial reaction, is that robocalls are a problem. The DOJ is trying to take, the DOJ and the FCC are trying to react to it. It just seems like fines and penalties and criminal charges. Do you think that's going to work? Because I am so disillusioned that that's going to have any impact.
No, and it's interesting. I did a series of interviews on TV probably 5-6 months ago. News 12 New Jersey, which is throughout New Jersey. It's a local news. I did a couple of New York stations, Pix 11 and a few others, all about robocalls. And back then, the problem existed. The problem still exists today. The fines don't work. But what does work and is starting to work, and this is what I think is more important, is DOJ and FCC have pushed back to who? The carriers. Once the carriers get on board, and we're talking about Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, and all the other smaller carriers, once it forces them to get on board and actually monitor and stop the robocalls, it will get better.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because in the past, they would appreciate revenue. They didn't care. As long as phone calls are being made, the more the merrier, whether it's a robot, a real person. Every time there's traffic, cha-ching, they're making money. Now they're not allowed to provide apps and extra fees on to take care of robocalls, so they lose that revenue. And there's fines and penalization if they're not monitoring their stuff using this technology, which is the stir and shaken that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
The big problem with robocalls are they're not, for the most part, generated in the US. They're generated overseas, and it's done illegally for the most part, and it's fractions of pennies to make a phone call. And they could do thousands of calls simultaneously to all of us till our eyes are bleeding, and it's all stats. It works. People pick up, they give away personal information, they fall victim to something, they get scam, tax fraud, they buy something they shouldn't, so on and so forth. So it's an effective means. But now that the carriers are on board and the gun's to their head, if you don't stop, you're going to be heavily fined and in big trouble. They're going to react. And that's what they're starting to do. The do not call registries don't work. The apps have databases you got to keep updating regularly. Frustrating. They kind of work for a little bit, but they really don't work. So I think until everybody gets on board, which is the carriers, it's going to start changing now. I'm starting to notice a little bit less robocalls. I still get them every day,
Mm-hmm.
but I was getting upwards of 10 plus a day. That's frustrating.
Yeah.
While we started this interview, I got one of the robocalls. That's spoofing again. And I was like, when I was doing a segment on this in the city with ABC News one day, I got a robocall while I was doing a segment on robocalls. It's that frustrating. It happens so often. So we're starting to see a change. It's the carriers that are going to help us. Pressure.
Definitely. And of course the stir shaken that we mentioned just lately there, much like the internet has embraced the HTTPS technology, stir shaken will be to phone calls what HTTPS, S being secure, is for internet, where essentially the phone companies are going to verify that the call that's being placed is actually coming from that number, and if it's not, they will tell you. that, hey, this is probably from a fake caller. So that technology is coming. Looking forward to it. Scott, we're flat out of time. There's music playing in the background. If people want to find out more about you and, of course, your book, I see it's on sale, where can they go?
Well, you can certainly go to my website, which you got up there, scottschober.com, and shoot me an email if you have any questions or whatever. You could certainly buy the book on Amazon. It's available in all different formats, and doing a lot of speaking coming up. I'm going to be out at RSA in San Francisco in a couple weeks there. So if anybody's out there, drop me a line, and hopefully we could meet up there and talk some more.
Absolutely. And of course, hey, next month we'll have to make sure that all works out. But Scott, thank you for doing this so last minute, and it worked out great.
Not a problem.
Thank you so much. Everyone else, Computer America, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. Have a great one. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Stay safe.
Stay safe.